Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Thomas. I am from Las Vegas, Nevada. I am the director of the Las Vegas Unity Dancers. We are a group of ministers that come from about 25 different churches all over the city, and we just come together to worship the only true and living God. What's so unique about the Las Vegas Unity Dancers is that we come from non-denomination, Church of God in Christ, Baptist, every denomination, but the only thing that we do have in common is that we always dance to worship God together. I also am the founder of the Manifestation Worship Arts Conference, which normally takes place every year in March here in Las Vegas, Nevada, and it is a worship arts conference. So now that you know a little bit about me, let me tell you a little bit about why I decided to take the class. The reason why I decided to take Moving Through the Scriptures is because I wanted a little something different in my life. Growing up, always being a ministry leader, we do so much pouring out into others that we don't always take that time to let someone pour back into us or to sharpen the gift and the tools that God has placed inside of us. So I decided to do something different and take a class. One of my friends encouraged me to take it, and I'm so excited. I'm so happy that I took it because it has been a life-changing course. And I would just like to share a little bit about one of the stories that I decided to do, which is the Daughters of Shiloh. I had such a hard time because the book is so awesome. You will want to talk about everybody in the Bible. But once I narrowed it down, I decided to talk about the Daughters of Shiloh. So with that being said, I'll tell you a little bit about the story. It is about a group of young virgins, 200 to be exact, that would dance every year in the same place at a festival, and everyone would look forward to them coming out there because that was something that they did every year annually. Okay, kind of sort of like the conferences that we do every year annually. So while they were there, they were kidnapped. Yes, they were kidnapped in broad daylight, okay? And this story is so touching to me because this is happening every day. Our daughters, our sons, our children, our loved ones are being snatched in broad daylight, and there's no one there to protect them. There's no one there looking for them. It's as if they disappear off the face of the earth. So that story touches me because it deals with right now. So what happened was the men of Israel, they all came together because they were angry and they were distraught and their feelings were hurt at the tribe of Benjamin. So what they decided to do was they made an oath to God, right? An oath. They said, because they have done this hurtful deed, because they have, they killed a Levite woman. So because they did that, we're no longer going to give our daughters to that tribe. So because they made that oath, they had to make good on the oath that they gave to God, right? Because a lot of times we say things with our mouth and then we can't always go back on them. So that's why it's very important that we remember what we speak, or even before we make a promise to God, that we be sure that that is truly what we mean when we say that. So the reason why this is so important is because a lot of dance ministers, a lot of dance leaders today, when we get angry, or when a lot of dancers today, when we get angry with another dance ministry or if a church or someone does something to us, we make such a rash decision on excluding or putting our mouth on something that is not of God, that God did not call us to do, or we offer something that God did not ask us for. And what happened was, because they did that, literally they killed a generation, right? Because in order for reproduction to happen, a man and a woman have to come together to reproduce. Well, if you have a tribe full of 600 men and there's no women, what will happen? The generation will die off. So literally they killed the generation and they didn't even know it. So we as leaders and we as dancers, we have to watch what comes out of our mouth, because we're killing generations of other future dance ministries and dancers that's coming up in the ministry, because before they can even get there, we're already putting our mouth on them, right? So Israel's decision would stop the growth of the tribe of Benjamin because they had no wives to reproduce. Now, when I started researching a daughter, why would they say we are not going to give our daughters to them, or we're not going to give our daughters to be married? A woman and a man back in the biblical days, and even right now, women are not worth as much as men. Back in slavery times, men cost more than women. So that's why it was easy for them to say, okay, we're not going to give our daughters to them in marriage, okay? So when the father would give their son in marriage, a father would always give their daughter in marriage all the time, even right now, right? We can look at it as an example of Rachel and Leah. Their father gave both of them away in marriage. So these fathers say, you know what? Because you did this harmful deed, you're not getting any more of our daughters, okay? Women represent a nation. When we look at Revelation 12, it says that a woman is a nation. Imagine how much strength that their daughters carried, how much strength that lies within their stomach. That's why they didn't want to give them away, right? But that's okay, because the story is going to get crazy. You're gonna figure out they didn't want to give their daughters away because of the oath, but they allowed them to kidnap somebody else's children, okay? Also, when we study a daughter or a woman in the Bible, in Genesis, God said it is not good for man to be alone. So if in Genesis, God said it's not good for man to be alone, why would they make an oath to God? Why would they make an oath and say that the men of Benjamin shall not have their daughters as wives? What did they think when they didn't think it out? They did not think that oath out. So that's why it's going to get a little tricky. So you got to make sure you follow me, okay? So why would they make that fast decision if God said it's not good for man to be alone? So we have the men of Israel. They called a meeting, and when they made the oath, and they said, you know what? Who was not here when the oath was made? So when they did a little thinking, they counted everybody around them, and they figured out that Jabesh Gilead, no one showed up from that tribe. So they said because no one was here when we made that oath, it doesn't apply to them. So what we're going to do is we're going to go kill all of their women, all of their men, all of their children, and we're only going to take 400 of their virgins because it was 600 men left from the tribe of Benjamin that did not have wives, which is a lot of men. So they took 400 virgins. That was the first thing that they did. They killed off a whole tribe, and then they took their virgins to add to the men of Benjamin that did not have any wives, okay? So what they didn't realize is that it was 200, they were 200 wives short of meeting their quota. So how many dance ministries, I have a question, is how many dance ministries have you left uncovered because they did not show up to your conference? How many people have you written off because they didn't support your event, because they wouldn't let you mentor them, because they didn't follow the way that you wanted it to go? So therefore, you know what? I'm not dealing with them no more. Y'all don't deal with them no more. They're not a part of the worship arts ministry or the worship arts arena. How many times have you excluded someone because they didn't fit what you wanted them to do? So we have to be careful not to have anyone assassinated with our mouth because they don't follow what we say, okay? Unfortunately, as I said, that there weren't enough women, so they needed to find 200 more women. Because they made an oath, the men of Israel, they could not go back on the oath that they gave God. So let's look at who else made an oath in the Bible. So as we're studying the scripture, okay, so now let's look at another oath that was made in the Bible that caused dire consequences. When we look at the story of Jethro and his daughter, okay, so what happened is Jethro's daughter came out dancing when he came home from winning a war, right? Because it was custom that the women in the Bible would come out dancing with trembles and with music when the men would come back from battle. So when her father came back, she just did what she knew to do. She came out dancing when he came home, but guess what happened? Jethro had made an oath before God that if he let him win that battle, that he would offer the very first thing that came out of his house. And the very first thing that came out of his house was his daughter, okay? Guess what? She was also a virgin. Ecclesiastes 5:46 says that when you make a vow to God, it's better not to make a vow than to make one and break it. Numbers 30:2 says that if a man vows a vow to the Lord, he swears an oath, and he shall do according to what proceeds out of his mouth. In Judges 11:34 and 35, Jethro gave an oath to God, and he sacrificed his daughter because she came out of his house dancing as a tradition. And the daughters of Shiloh danced out of tradition. They danced at a festival, and this festival would happen every year, okay? We also dance at our churches. Whenever someone is healed, whenever someone wins a battle of victory, whenever someone's child comes home from prison, I know I danced after my heart was healed. All the dancers dance, so that's normally what we do. We dance a dance of victory, but at what cost, okay? Because they both were sacrificed. the daughter of Shiloh, the daughters of Shiloh were sacrificed, and also Jethro's daughter was also sacrificed out of dancing, out of tradition. Where Jethro's daughter was killed, but the daughters of Shiloh, they were kidnapped. How many dancers are we sacrificing because we refuse to seek God? Because we refuse to seek him before we make a move. Because we dance, right? We dance when? On Christmas, on Easter, on Mother's Day, at Pastor's anniversary, because it's our praise dance anniversary. We've been serving God forever and ever, and it becomes a tradition, right? So it's no longer because God called it, it's because this is what we do. We do it every year at the same time. So how many dancers are we truly sacrificing? Are we putting in harm's way because we're doing something that we haven't always seek God for, to make sure that that's what he called? Okay, so then the men of Israel told the tribe of Benjamin exactly where to go to find the daughters of Shiloh. They knew that they would be the only women at the festival. So there's no other women there. The festival was for men, and the daughters of Shiloh would be the virgins that would be there, that would be dancing, okay? So literally, these virgins were in plain sight. So it wasn't hard to find them. They were right there. The daughters of Shiloh, there were stipulations with these young girls, okay? They had to be virgins. They had to be pure, okay? They couldn't minister with that certain group if they weren't pure. So I ask you, as dance leaders and dance ministers, is what are the stipulations with your dance ministry? What has God given you specifically for your dance ministry that you are no longer holding valid because you want everybody to come dance with them? Now, we know in the Bible there are instances where all the women danced and all the people danced, okay? And they came out dancing at celebration, but that wasn't the case with these girls. They had to be pure. So how many of us actually have pure dancers or pure intentions when God tells us to do something, okay? Shiloh means peaceful when we study the name, but it doesn't look like any peace was going on at that place at this occasion when the girls were kidnapped, okay? Another thing that is significant about Shiloh is that the Ark of the Covenant was there, okay? So my question when I was studying was like, how could they steal or kidnap some girls where the presence of the Lord is? If God is there, were they being disrespectful to God? Were they not reverencing the fact that this is the God who delivered them? This is the God that set them free. They lost all respect for him when they went into his territory and snatched the girls. Okay? So how could they commit a crime like this where the presence of the Lord was? It makes me wonder, how many crimes do the dancers or the dance ministry commit Sunday after Sunday, day after day, event after event, when we get in front of the altar of God and we're sitting up there dancing after we done left the club? Are we sitting up there dancing after we have been fornicating or living a life that's not holy to God? How many times are we saying, Lord, we don't care about your presence. Lord, we don't want to seek your presence. Lord, we don't care, what we're doing. We just want to dance. So that's exactly what happened. What are you doing every time you get up there and go before God? With all your pretty garments on, but you're filthy because you have no reverence for God. What are we doing as dance ministers, okay? So that makes me also say is, who is covering the dance ministry? So you have 200 girls dancing in plain sight. Where are their parents? Where are their fathers? Where are their brothers? Who was there to protect them, okay? It also makes you look at that when you compare it to the dance ministry. Who's covering the dancers? Who's covering them when they're most vulnerable? Who's praying for them? Who's seeking God for them? Who's making sure that they're at the right place at the right time, okay? In essence, it also makes you wonder is, while the dancers are dancing, who's making a deal behind their back? So they went out there with pure intentions to do what God have called them to do, and someone made a deal about them behind their back. So this is why we have to be careful when people come up to us and want to mentor our dancers, right? It's a lot of mentors that want to have mentees, but what exactly is your reason for mentoring them? Do you have good intentions? Are you trying to make a deal behind their back because they're more anointed than you? Are they anointed and you want to get seen? Right? We have to be very, very careful when we're guiding people because everyone does not have good intentions. Okay? When we are worshiping God, I know when I'm worshiping God, I'm most vulnerable. I don't really pay attention to what's going on around me. And I could imagine that those girls, they were not paying attention to their surrounding area, so they didn't see that there was lurking, that the enemy was lurking all around them because they were worshiping God. Okay, who's protecting these people who's protecting the dancers when the enemy shows up? Okay, where are the men, where are their parents that are supposed to protect them? Where are the leaders that are supposed to protect the dancer? Where is your praise dance leader at? Do you have a good covering? Okay, who is really making a deal behind your back? Keep your eyes open. Okay, it doesn't really matter that they had on dance garments. We don't know what they had on. So you can have on the best of the best and still be out of order, or still be not paying attention and not alert to what's going on. So I am advising you, and I am encouraging you, that whoever you're mentoring or wherever you're at in the dance ministry, to always be aware of what's going on, and always make sure that you have good intentions and that others have good intentions for you. Okay, so we're going to fast forward. So Israel and the Philistines, after the girls were snatched, right? So the girls were snatched, 200 of them, and the tribe of Benjamin, they went on. They built their houses, they had their children, and they had their inheritance. Okay, and the men of Israel told the fathers and the brothers of the women of the daughters of Shiloh that you didn't give them to us, so you didn't break the oath. We took them, so you don't have anything to do with it. They knew that they were wrong. If you can go and tell their fathers and their brothers that you didn't give them to us, we took them, so you're not in trouble with the oath, you already knew your intentions were wrong. Okay, so it goes on to say that they did whatever they wanted because they had no king at that time. So now we're going to fast forward a little bit, and Israel goes to war with the Philistines. Okay, so in this war, they're losing. Israel is losing and the Philistines are winning. So they say, you know what? Because we're losing, let's go back and get the Ark of the Covenant. Everybody knows that the Ark of the Covenant is a place where the presence of God is. So they thought, because we're going to go back and get this Ark, and when we come back, we're going to win. A lot of times as dancers, we think because we go back and pray when we wasn't living right, that we go back and pray because we got sick. We go back and pray because we're having an event. We go back and pray because we want God to anoint our dancers, but we ain't been living right the whole time. We've been living reckless, right? So now they go back and get the Ark of the Covenant, and they think because they brought the glory in that they're going to win. Well, lo and behold, they still lost. They still lost. We as dancers, we have to do what is right from the very beginning. I urge you dancers to live right, to seek God, to change your ways, to get on your face. Don't wait until a storm comes. Don't wait until everything breaks loose and you're out of control and you want to commit suicide and no one loves you and you don't have any money to pay your bills. Seek God now. Don't wait till then, because sometimes grace runs out. And in their case, grace ran out and they lost the battle. Okay? And then the Philistines stole the Ark of the Covenant. So not only did they lose, they stole the Ark of the Covenant and their leadership died. Okay? So just because you have good motives doesn't mean that they're God motives. Make sure that you know exactly what God has called you to do and that you live according to his will and his purpose. So they went to battle and they brought up God because they thought that he was going to deliver them like they always did, but they lost. Okay? And their leaders died because they weren't living according to God's purpose either. They were leading the children in a way that was not pleasing to God. So as leaders, be a true example of what God has called you to be. Because when a battle comes, when a storm comes, you want to be an example to show other people, to show other dancers that God is still holy, that he is still pure, that he is still righteous, and his way still stands no matter what the world is doing, okay? So the reason why that's important is because when the battle was over, the presence of the Lord left. Okay? So Eli's two sons died. Eli died. And when Eli's son was in labor, after she had her baby, she pushed the baby out, which was a boy, And then she died, but she named him Ichabod, which means the glory of God has left. So I challenge you right now as the movement ministry to look at God and say, you know what, in this season in 2020, in the middle of a pandemic, when no church is open, there's nowhere for us to go dance. You have to dance at home. You have to dance outside. Is what do you do when the glory of God has left? Do you continue to dance in church like you've always danced without seeking him? Do you continue to put your same clothes back on like you always have without seeking him to find out what song he wants you to dance to, where he wants you to dance, or if he even wants you to do it? What do you do when the glory of God is gone? That's what I want you to think about. So with that being said, I challenge you to get back on your face. Pray and ask God to anoint you like never before. Get in his word and get to know God for yourself and no one else, so that the glory of God never departs from you. Amen. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and you guys have a blessed night.